All right, we are live. Habari and welcome to African Traditions with Tanzan, your host. Before we begin, as we always do, we start with the prayer to the ancestors to guide us through our conversation, for us to have a good conversation, for us to have insight, wisdom, understanding, to share knowledge and to receive it with grace. And with that, I welcome you to Swahili Nation. And greetings, everyone. Okay, we have our first person in the house. Greetings, Adisu Abebe. Habari, Adisu. Habari to you. Good to have you in the house. I see you already have an answer. We have another early riser. Amani, my sister. Mama Dada Casidra, good to have you. Good to have you in the house. And everyone else. So Adisu already knows. Good for you. I hope you will share with us and expound on your answer. As I said, Dada Casidra is here. Yes. You got it. You got it. You got it. And Amani is habari is greetings. It's hello. It's almost it's like saying what's up. And the literal meaning is habari, which is what is the news. And I would say mzuri, which is good. So it's like somebody asking you, how is the news? And I would say mzuri. And hello, what's YouTube? Good to have you. Interesting name. It's one. What's new? YouTube. Welcome. And thanks for joining us again. I remember you were here for another session, for another interesting session. So thank you so much for joining us again today. And Daniel, oh good, okay. We have quite a few people in. Amani to Daniel, Temes again. Yes. Oh, Amani. Amani is Dada Kasida. Amani means peace. Amani is peace. So Amani means peace. So when you greet each other, you say peace is Amani. So Amani, Daniel is peace. Peace to everyone. So peace to everyone, and karibu, which is welcome. You'll hear this one a lot when you go to Kenya. Karibu. Karibu is welcome. You're welcome to its hospitality, welcome to food, welcome to different things. So yes. Thank you, Dada. We appreciate you. We appreciate you too. And the last time before we start, I think we have said hello. Thank you. As you remember, thank you is asante or asante sana. So asante is thank you. Okay, so quite a few words today. Quite a few words we've learned today. So today we will be talking about the concept of love. Not that we know any more about it than anybody else. It's just that it's something that people always talk about. We talk about, how the situation of men and women, children and men, and then people together. As cliched as it sounds, all the world need is love. It's not everything that they need, but they certainly, need a lot of that. I think we are suffering from a lack of love. We are suffering from a lack of understanding of what it is. And, it is time that we we had a discussion about it. We had a talk and really defined what we mean when it comes to defining what love is, the emotion or the or the concept of it. And love has not always meant the same thing to everyone. In olden days, love had a completely different conception. People did not think of it as we do now. In fact, it was considered a sort of an aberration, so to speak, almost not even a luxury, because even people who are considered in the top class were not allowed to love, so to speak, when it comes to when it came to marriage. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of how people have viewed love. And bear with me, let's see if this works. Hopefully today technology is okay. So let me know if you can see. Yeah, we're still working things out, so it takes a while. But let me know if you can see. If not, I'll try to make things a bit bigger. Okay. Can you read? Type a 1 if you can read it. If not, I can make it a little bit bigger. Can you read it, or it's too small? If you can't read it, type a 2. If you can read it, type a 1. So it seems a bit, it doesn't seem all the way. Let's see. Okay, maybe I might just make it bigger. I don't know. Yeah, things sometimes don't always work out as they do. As they should. As they should. As they should. Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, so there's several concepts of love. Some people have viewed it as a union, as a union between two people. Sorry, where are we now? Okay, here we go. So a union between two people, it can be defined as a robust concern for somebody else. It's the other aspect of it is love as value. Either you are praising the value of something, giving something value to something or somebody, or bestowing value to it, or a mix of the in between. It can also be viewed as an emotion, as a proper emotion, or as a complex emotion. A proper emotion is one that is felt, in the moment, but a complex one is one that is felt for an object that, can still change. So if you like something, you like it as it is, versus liking it for something that it's going to become. Because if you like something as it is and then it changes, then what does that mean? What does that make of your emotion at the time? So those are a few things to consider. So just a quick history on the history, and we'll look at the modern history, because we might do a part 2 after we look at more. But even in the West, which obviously we are in now, love has not always been, the same conception. People always think that the way we are now is the way that we've always been, or the way we look at things. But in the past, love has actually evolved in history. There are different ways, the evolution of love. There are different ways of arranging relationships depending on what a given society happens to believe in. Love is a cultural invention, and we're not at the end of its evolution. So so let's look at a few snippets of history, of Western history. So before love all started as it started as a transaction. So if you go back, in time, for the longest time, for example, the Euphrates king betrothed his daughter to the nearest kingdom of Yanas, and he had far from the outcome of love. The marriage like that between many powerful people in the ancient world was purely transactional. The area that he married her off to is called Mari. It occupied a critical position in the trade routes between Syria and Mesopotamia, and marrying would allow to expand his wealth and power. So in the past, before love was considered, an emotion that was tied to marriage and all this, and it had gained importance, marriage was simply, a way of expanding your kingdom, a way of increasing your land, your influence, and so on. And it was a transaction. It was a monetary transaction, especially in Mesopotamia and Sumeria, as we've seen, and also in feudal Europe for the longest time. So this may be alien to us because we don't see the possibility of practical considerations when considering marriage or partnership. People do, but not to the extent that before. In modern days, feelings are meant to be our only guide. Yet for thousands of years, until only a few seconds on the historical clock, it was unambiguously meant to be only about land, power, and money. So marriage was only about three things. It was land, power, and money. But with the evolution of love, it became the first almost pre-modern interpretation of love was the troubadours. This is France in the 12th century, so France 1147 AD. So there was this fellow Geoffrey Rudel, the Prince of Blaye or whatever, and he set for Tripoli in modern-day Lebanon. I'm surprised. I thought Tripoli, I guess there's a Tripoli in Lebanon as well. I thought Tripoli was in Libya, but okay. So he set off to see the Countess of Tripoli, whom he had fallen deeply in love. Rudel is one of the earliest known troubadours or skilled court poets who rise to prominence in southern France. His idea of love is very particular and at that time dramatically new. It's love that's utterly divorced from practical considerations, that doesn't involve children, money, dynasties, or even any kind of reciprocation. The troubadour poets never tried to have intercourse with the objects of their love. Their focus was exclusively on what we'd call the infatuation, or more colloquially, the crush side of love. He had fallen in love with the Countess without ever setting eyes on her, pining away for his lady from hundreds of miles away. He wrote, "I knew I loved you before I met you, and I don't care who you are, where you are." He composes and sets to music many songs expressing grief and joy. So, in those days, so love goes from becoming, okay, you can't see Dada Casida. Okay, let me try to make it a little bit bigger then. The only thing is when you make it big, I need to play around with these things sometimes, so I can figure out, because when you try to make it bigger, then it makes, you can't see it all on the screen. But let's see. Okay, I think that's the biggest we can make it without losing all kinds. Okay, so now we go from the transactional aspect of love in the Mediterranean to now we've skipped over obviously, but it was stayed that way for a long time, now to the France in the 12th century, where you have this romantic but almost how do you say, they're romantic in their minds but not physically. So these troubadours in France, they sing love songs, and they whine and pine after the object of their affection, but they do not try to have that affection reciprocated. So they love without being loved. And continuing with the troubadours, they took love very seriously, only they didn't see it linked to marriage. So for them, at that time, marriage was not linked to love. Marriage, as we said, transactionally was land, power, and influence. And then, so the troubadours, they elevated love, but they divorced it from marriage. So they only wanted to love, but they did not want to marry. And this romantic love is somebody that you're never going to live with or do household chores with. And that may have been the secret of its intensity. This kind of love was spared too much contact with daily life. So they never got to live with the object of their affection, just, love from a distance. And this idea was not tied to a notion of moving in together or intertwining of two practical, economic, and social lives. So yeah, that was a concept of love at the time for the troubadours. They simply wanted to express it and make music and talk about it, but not so much to go through it. So that was their conception of it. Okay, so let's look at the comments. Habari Adisu Damtel says, if you go through Corinthians 13, you're really doing it. Okay. Dada Casida says, in slavery days, we couldn't show love because if we show love, they would use it against us by selling our babies. So a lot of times we had to be very negative about our family members. Yeah, that was quite a real shame. Not just the expression of love, but the denial of that expression. It's hard enough to be able to express love in a free manner, and being forbidden from expressing it is, that's a real tragedy. Okay, this one is a hard one. Habari Kabdimajid Kabdala. Welcome. Dada Casida says we only love according to our feelings. Yes, in modern times, feelings are the most important thing when it comes to love. But as we've shown, love was not always connected to feelings. There was a time when love was simply actually removed from marriage. There was a time when love with the troubadours was divorced completely from marriage. So love has not always been about feelings. In fact, for the longest time, it was not even about feelings. It was simply about, climbing the social ladder or maintaining your place in it. Hello, Yodit Tube. Good to have you. Okay, so Dada Casida says, no, just read it, I will listen. Okay, I'll try to, I tried to make it the best that I could, and I apologize. Let me see if I can play around with it a bit. Okay, if not, we'll just try to make the best of it. Okay, so okay, well that's how the best we can do for now. I'll see if maybe in the future we can make it just a bit better. But so I'll just read through it if you all don't mind. And thank you. Oh, Amani, Dada. And thank you. Oh, sorry, that is me on the other stream. Okay. I was trying to how do they say it? Do too much? Yes. But let me say hello to the podcast. Okay, good. Yes, one must always take time. Let me see if that worked. Okay. Yes, so as we said, our conception of what love means in the present day is something of the sort of feelings, emotions, passions, and this, very overwrought kind of, image. When we see even the movies are simply about falling in love or, being in love or all this. It's usually something that is an emotional thing, but that's a pretty new way of looking at emotions, or something, tying emotions to something as important as the rest of your life. So when you look at in the past, it has not always been love and feelings and all of these things. So continuing with the troubadours, now we come to the time of the kings. So the king, we all know about the king and the queen, but what people, not even that they failed to talk about it, because it was really a well-known secret and it continues until now. So in the past, the king had, the like they said with the transactional analysis, with love as a transaction. When kings got married, or when actually when the nobility and everyone else got married, it was not something that you'd find somebody who you love and you'd marry. They would look for a kingdom that was, that had something, expansion capacity or potential, and then they would have this transaction between the two sides and see what each kingdom could bring to the other, and that's what it was. So love, marriage, and all that was a transaction. But after the troubadours had brought in the idea of romance, almost, because the troubadours were the pre-romance people. They had, made love into this, passionate and elevated it to something beyond just transactional, although they had purified it from, from marriage. But when the troubadours came in, they brought in with them the idea of love. And when that idea came, it was still not linked to marriage. So marriage was still very much transactional as before. But now there was the idea of marriage that was transactional, and love that was, outside of that. So in that respect, the troubadours, they showed a historical moment when love was not tied to moving in together or intertwining of two social lives. It was simply, an emotion. So simply emotional without having any, transactional aspect of it. But when the king, was said to marry, the king would marry for money, for land, for power, obviously. But for love, he would have, the mistresses. So the kings were expected to have not just one, but several mistresses. So this describes, Versailles. This was a typically common thing. So, but it's just one of the many instances of such. So Versailles, France, 14th of September, 1745. So this is, quite, about 400 years ago. Yeah. So a 23-year-old beauty from Paris approaches Louis XV and curtsies 3 times. This simple gesture makes it official. Jeanne Antoinette is the king's mistress, the chief mistress, and from now on she will be known as Madame de Pompadour and reside at court with the king. The king has by this point been married for 20 years, but marriage does not mean fidelity. You marry for reasons of state and you have mistresses on the side and no one gets upset. Louis XV has several mistresses, including the 14-year-old Mary Louise, who is painted in a famous semi-pornographic painting by Force, where she was at Versailles. So when you see this, at this time, it was still a mixture between, it was still a separation between the transaction of marriage and the idea of love or desire. So those two were separated. So the king had his state duties, which one of them, the state duty was marriage, the best possible arrangement or transaction for the kingdom. But he was also expected to have his mistresses, whom he chose for himself. So in this time, in the 18th century, at this time, there was an acceptance of the imperfect fit between marriage and love. It was understood that there would always be tension between the two. Marriage was for children, practicality, and continuity. And love was for excitement, drama, and sex. And one should never try to blend the two rather than be underhanded or deceitful like many people today. So the modern idea of deceit starts not now. It's a continuation of the separation between, marriage and love. The troubadours had separated it, but the 18th century, they tried to fit the two. So there was an acceptance that you could not fit the two, because for them, marriage was for legacy, for children, it was for practical purposes and so on. And love was for excitement. That's why there were so many, novels about, illicit love affairs. And up to now, all that, excitement and so on. The marriage is supposed to be just, very solid, practical, and so on. And love was the exciting part of it. And so if you want to have both, legacy and drama, I guess, you should be underhanded and deceitful, which is how people are today, the author says. So for the King of France, he simply split love for marriage and without shame or guilt made his romantic attachments and organized his public part of his life with his wife. Yes, with his wife. So he, there was the public life, which was the married part with the king and the queen, and then there was the private life, which was the king and the king and the mistresses. So that was the love part of that. So in the 18th century, yes, so we're talking about, so now comes, there was in marriage an expectation that the parents had the final say, actually the first and final say when it came to marriage. So not only in arranging marriage, but in approving it. You could choose a partner, they will choose a partner for you, or you could choose one with their approval. So that was how it was for the longest time, that people were under the authority of their parents, even when it came to marriage. And this went for both poor and rich. Even rich people, they could be disinherited if they did not choose, the right partner that the parents approved. And so parental authority was very great at the time. But it started to change in a village called Gretna Green, where people started to escape English law, and here is where Romanticism comes over, and this is the era that we are still in. So Romanticism privileges feeling over reason and impulse over tradition. So all those, movies about people running to airports or people holding up signs or doing all this crazy romantic stuff, this is the period that, starts it. Romanticism transformed love's old system of marrying for political or economic advantage. So this Scottish village called Gretna Green, it became a place where people would go to escape their parental, parental parents, great. They would go to escape from their parents' authority, especially when it came to marriage. So they could go and marry, over the tradition, because tradition dictated that the parents had the authority over the children's marriage and choice. And so for them, this was the first time that people actually had authority to choose their own partners, and not to, not to have the approval of their parents. So in this, it became an important place, because marriage now becomes the consequence of love, and the feeling that if two people love each other, that alone is what matters, and not the standing of the wider family, career, or how the parents might feel about it or not. So the parental authority becomes more and more irrelevant, and then eventually it doesn't really become anything other than, cursory approval. So Dada Casida says, that's what's going on with the Black folk here in America. We have no love for our own. It's very hurtful. Yeah, love is something that a lot of people, we have to learn. It's something that is not really taught. Everyone is looking for it, and yet very few people are learning about it. It seems almost strange that we don't have even classes about love or relationships or things that are, important for everybody. And that is why the entertainment industry becomes the monopoly on the subject, because they're the only ones who can present love in the movies, or, make it exciting and all that. So most of us, we learn about love from maybe from books, but mostly from television. We learn about how one is supposed to conduct, how one is supposed to feel. Remember that old and songs, I really know that they really last. I'm not going to sing, but that Whitney Houston song, yeah. How will you know if you're asking if a child, not a child, well, a teenager asks you, how will I know? And then you tell them, oh, and then people will say, oh, you'll just know. How is that an answer? I mean, it's hard to explain, but it's still not an answer that would satisfy somebody who is really asking, how will you know? So yeah, it's more complicated. The focus says, in America, relationships become transactional more than love, but not the same kind of transactions as before. Now most are just selfish. And the difference is that in the past, when it was transactional, it was more of a communal transactionalism. It wasn't that you were directly benefiting, it was that your community was benefiting, your family was benefiting, and so on. If you married into a particular family, your familial legacy would increase, your land would increase, your power would increase, your influence, and so on. So this was what people were looking for. It was not simply singular gold digging. It was more that both sides were looking for gold advantage, for both sides. I'm getting mine, you're getting yours, we're both getting ours. It's great. So that's how, that was the transaction. Today, nowadays, it's more of a personal transaction to people rather than a communal transaction. So, yes. Oh, greetings. Meron Live says, hey, Swahili Nation, I just saw your picture on Addis Ababa Mayor's page. Thank you for standing with Ethiopia. Oh, yes, and this is in reference to Mika. There has been, I don't know how many of you know, you can please go and listen to Swahili Nation's broadcast earlier, but there's a big protest going on in Ethiopia right now and so many other African cities where they are protesting the neo-colonial attempts, to further control African countries, especially Ethiopia. There has been, a story about the dam, and then there's been a lot of politics around it. But basically, as we've always done, African countries always have to fight for their sovereignty, for the ability to control their destiny. So there was a protest in the streets of Ethiopia today, and Mika was there. And I see Meron says that I guess Mika's page or appeared on the Addis Ababa Mayor's page. That's great. That's great. So yeah, definitely. We have to stand with our people, especially in the fight against these forces that always try to impose upon us, and that also creates that difficulty even when it comes to to loving each other as African people, because we are faced with two opposing forces. We are faced with that force from outside that constantly looks down on us, constantly tells us that we're not worthy of anything but pity or condescension, or just when people look at Black people, at Africans, we're not given the same kind of love and consideration as other people, and in turn we don't give ourselves that kind of consideration. So we are always at each other's throats. We're always failing to work together, failing to love each other, failing to work together. And a lot of that is that we have not really been taught to love. We have not been taught to love ourselves, to love each other, first and foremost, to love our families, which we do. Love is it's an instinct, but it's also, a lesson. It's something that doesn't just come, the feeling is there, but the action has to be learned. Even children, they love their parents, of course. Even when a child is misbehaving, even when a child is being disobedient, that they still love the parents. It's just that they're misbehaving. So it's not so much to say that if somebody behaves in an unloving manner, they necessarily don't love. Sometimes they just don't know how to show it. And I think that for us as a people, as individuals, we have not really been taught how to show love to each other. We haven't really been taught how to love ourselves without it being either excessive or being, selfish, or just looking out for our own. So yes, there's a lot that we have taken on that we need to learn and unlearn. Dada Kasida says, we only started acting like that when we started coming together with European people. And, there is some merit in that. And that's why we go through the European conception of love, so that we can understand why we love the way we do, why we act the way we do, because like I said, the forces that have shaped us as a people, and none of us are, are exempt from it. Historically, we have all been in contact with, foreigners to some extent. We have all been, even if you have not met a single, European, you still see them in television. They still affect you one way or another. You still hear their music or listen to or read their books. So none of us are affected or unaffected from it. Some more than others, some more closely historically than others, but we are all, under the same system. So in order to, have any hope of, even transcending the system, we have to understand what kind of a system that we are in, and especially what kind of a love system that we are in, because everything isn't a system. There's an economic system, there's a spiritual system, and this is the love system we're in. And what we are in right now is a system of emotions, if ultimate emotions when it comes to love, but brutal logic when it comes to economics. So as human beings, we're torn between, getting lost in the la la land of love and then getting crushed in the, in the concrete jungle of economics and politics and so on. So we're constantly going back and forth. And what needs to happen is a balance of the two. We should be more logical and practical in love, and we should be a little bit more emotional or empathetic when it comes to politics and society and things like that. So we have absolutely divided everything into this very strict of corners, and it works against the human individual to be put in such, in such corners. So love and marriage has become simply something about emotions. If you feel it, that's what the truth is. Truth is now in feelings instead of looking at things logically. The idea of anybody, even having some kind of say or authority in what you say has been completely, thrown out. Tradition has been appended, because even in a lot of in many cultures especially, and it's not just about the feelings, it's also about, the authority and the communalism. When most communities, like we said, even when love was transactional, it was communally transactional. It was something that the entire family was involved, and they looked at it as, what are we as a group? Because like we said, a group, somebody, it doesn't take, somebody was not raised alone. Somebody put in the effort, the time, the work to raise a child, and for that child to simply go, it's a very sad state of affairs. Marriage is as a happy time because when it's looked at as a union, but that union, it demands that one person leave and go somewhere else because, they have to live together. So one side of that, the family is going to be losing out, a member of their family to another. And so this is why, for example, in many African societies, we had the concept of a dowry, where, the family of the bride was given a dowry price, and it wasn't a price like you're being paid for. That's why people don't understand. But it was an appreciation for the work that the family of the woman has done in order to raise a good wife. So that was the dowry. But in any case, marriage was always about, the family, the community. And then when it came to when it started to change, even in the Western society, it was, when the village, the Scottish village, when people started running away from their parents to go and marry. And there may be extremes one way for another. Sometimes in some cultures, parents have extreme authority. And before that romantic rebellion, parents had ultimate authority over their children. They could say, who they could marry, and the children had absolutely no right whatsoever. So it was a kind of rebellion that, that was felt to be, an expression of individual freedom, but at the same time, it was also the beginning of the break of the bond between, children and their parents when it came to marriage, in the West anyway. But you can see those kinds of influences up to now, because you see that even in the West, people don't ask. They may ask for, approval for marriage. They may ask for, oh, maybe the father's hand for the daughter's hand in marriage. But in a general sense, people don't usually, wait for their families to give them the approval. So even that, that aspect of it is a throwback from the past when people threw off the authority of the parents. Casido says, we have even a dysfunctional love for our enemies. Yeah, everything about our love is upside down. We don't love ourselves. We love other people. We don't, respect each other, to some extent. So there's a lot of ways that our love, our idea of love has become corrupted in a great deal. So yeah. So continuing with this idea of love. So firstly, love was supposed to be something that was emotional. It was a feeling, like that Michael Jackson song. And then that was now, we stopped off at the king and his mistresses in 1745 of September, 1745. So that's the 18th century. So now that was the love and marriage was still separated, but you could have both in different contexts. So now we go to, let's see, London, England, 1813, Jane Austen. Jane Austen, she's a popular writer in the 1800s, but she's also popular now. She's one of the most, done novels ever. Like, there's so many films and movies, Pride and Prejudice. I'm sure you've heard about that one, Sense and Sensibility, and all these are Something and Something novels. But in one of the novels that people was very popular was this, can't remember the name. Yeah, Pride and Prejudice. So in Pride and Prejudice, there's this fellow Darcy, and he proposes to the character Elizabeth Bennet. So not only is he handsome, but he's also rich, and Elizabeth is from a poor family. So she should ordinarily say yes to such a practically good proposition. But Elizabeth says no, because Darcy, for all his gifts, he's also arrogant and a snob. Pride and Prejudice suggests that women marry for money, but Elizabeth reveals that now the belief is that not only should they marry for money, but they should love the man they betrothed themselves. Even Austen, 11 years earlier, had rejected a proposal of marriage, claiming anything is to be preferred rather than marrying without affection. So not only does this have to be handsome, he has to be rich. He also has to have, character and affection and, all this warmth and tenderness. So in Austen's eyes, a good marriage requires warmth and tenderness of heart and strong, practically worldly managerial competence, and people are actually Austen draws the conclusion that few people are actually well suited for marriage. So for her, it's not just love. Love should also have affection, warmth, and tenderness. So love, not just one emotion, but now, there's more emotions being piled upon love. So before it was simply, you should love because it's a feeling, but now you should love somebody not just because of a feeling, but because of, his warmth, affection, and all these other things. So the criteria, increases with every generation. Now for London, 1859, Darwin. So 24th of November, 1859 is when Charles Darwin publishes The Origin of Species. And in it, he says that human beings are descended from primates, and that means that we've inherited not just the skeletal structure, but also the drives and the basic psychology. Darwin's detractors are aghast at the implied humiliation, but that's consolation in Darwin, because he suggests that but to Darwin, he says that it's a consolation because he suggests that our inability to live up to ideals is not wholly our fault. So basically what Darwin is saying is that even though we are driven, we are descended from primates and apes, to his contemporaries, it seemed like a humiliation that we are nothing more than apes and we take on the psychology. But Darwin, he uses that to say that no, actually now we can explain why it is that we behave in such ape-like fashion or in such a beast-like fashion, because we are, at the end of it, just mere primates. So for him, it's somewhat of a consolation. So if we are half apes and and half human, then it would be very difficult for us to achieve something as big as love. So he uses pessimisms about relationships, and says, for instance, that being monogamous is that human beings by nature are at least predisposed to, as many apes are, polygamy, opportunistic sex, and the dumping of one mate for another on the basis of nothing more than their breeding potential signal, and such unedifying and unspiritual characteristics as how big the parts are. So he's saying that no, actually humans just are just like animals, and that monogamy is something that is outside of our character, really. That just like animals, we simply look for for the easy way. Now let's move forward to San Francisco, United States, in 1965. So from Darwin to the States. So the world's first hippies, they wear their hair long and they reject the sophistication of modern life for the romantic notion of getting back to the natural state of grace. Protesters, beatniks, and anarchists hold up signs and chant the phrase "sex is clean, law is obscene" in front of a hastily group of reporters. This event is one of many organized by groups advocating free love in the 1960s. In America, they argue against society rules against nudity, same-sex relationships, and sex before marriage, and all forms of sexual repression. Soon, monogamy itself is being questioned. So in the 60s in America, it wasn't America only, but America was the center of it. There was this push for, for the free love, for the full expression of love and in all its various forms. And so anything that was taboo or that was in the past, forbidden, looked down upon, or, shamed was put at the forefront. So they argued against society's rules, against nudity, against premarital sex, against same-sex relationship, against any form of sexual repression, and even monogamy itself became a question. So in an enlightened world, they argued that sexually liberated men and women should just give up on marriage along with it, because they say that marriage brought jealousy, adultery, and divorce. It's a beautiful romantic idea of what love could be, and it eventually collapses into a disaster. So in the 60s in America, they wanted this idea that men and women could just live free of, the consequences of sex and sex responsibility, and everybody could do whatever they want, and it was just free for all, just everybody, having the maximum amount of fun. And unfortunately, it really, as I said, it collapsed into disaster. And the reasons for advocating this free love was, they say that sex had been repressed, had been, almost policed, and they wanted it to be a free choice between consenting adults. And so, they also were against marriage, because they say that once you achieve liberation, then marriage brings, this emotions, these negative emotions. It brings about jealousy, it brings about adultery, insecurity, all this. So if you are really free, you should be free of all these negative emotions that come with marriage. And so they were against marriage, but it turned out that that's not really human either, that human beings do want some that kind of cohabitation or companionship. So now we fast forward from the 60s to Belgium in 2015. So Belgium, as a country, achieved a notorious distinction. It is the nation with the highest rate of divorce in the developed world, and an astonishing 71% of couples will split up here. Wow. So the newspaper asks why. Initial expectations are not met. Other countries are not far behind. The UK, the divorce rate is 42%. In the US, 53%. Hungary 67%, Portugal 68%. Part of the reason lies in the disappointment people feel with what had happened, apparently been promised to them by the freewheeling 1960s and before that by 19th century romanticism. The dream of love survives, but it disappoints constantly. At dinner tables around the world, intelligent people complain that they simply can't understand the strange and strictly subject of love. The future hope for love lies in the notion of sacrifice that is in accepting that we won't get everything we want from love, relationships, or marriage. So now we come to the modern times, finally. So this is, this is like a microcosm or something of, of the modern world, of the Western world. It's a world of high divorce rates, of disappointment, of this pessimistic attitude towards love. Not that people stop chasing it, but people are very disillusioned with it. There's this idea that, it's a hopeless endeavor or it's something that people simply do. And this was, they don't even talk about the, the current culture of the Tinder dates and, the casual college hookups and all this, interactions that people still have and yet don't lead to, to permanent living situations. Or if they do, not permanent ones. So it says that in Belgium, 71% of couples will split up. People thought that in America was high with 53%, but yeah, this is 71%, 61% in Hungary and all this. So like it says, the dream of love survives, but it disappoints constantly. And intelligent people complain that they can't understand the tricky subject of love. So love is it's not even about intelligence or stupidity or sophistication or education. It seems this malaise, affects everyone, and especially the people who you'd think are clever enough to solve this simple thing. But even the most intelligent, people, they still, they still can't solve it. The future hope for love lies in the notion of sacrifice. Sacrifice, that we're accepting that we won't get everything we want from love, relationships, or marriage, versus the idea of modern idea of completion, of being fulfilled, of being, made happy, and, love completes you. This idea that love adds something to you instead of the opposite idea that sacrifice, that you actually have to give up something for love. So in our modern day, this idea of giving up something is not looked at so much as love. Love, when people get into it, they're looking to gain something from it. So when people don't want to sacrifice something, they end up becoming disappointed because everybody's looking to gain something and nobody is looking to give up something. And so both sides are disappointed when they're trying to gain, and they all both end up losing. So we're trying to do something highly ambitious in our modern ideas of relationship: unite sex, affection, the raising of a family, a career, and adequate material security. So all this in one. We will by necessity fail to get all this. The idea of sacrifice, though, helps us if we consider half of what we really want and need might still be quite a lot in comparison with what it would be like if we avoided relationships altogether. So I don't know if it's he or she, they're saying that we will by necessity fail to get all of this. We will fail to get all of, sex, affection, family, career, and adequate material security. It will be difficult to get all, 6 of those things together. The idea of sacrifice helps us because if we consider that even getting half of those things is still quite a lot compared to if we avoided getting them all together. So clearly, solitary life can work out really well for a few people, but mostly we hate living alone. So, as much as, human beings, we have evolved to be solitary creatures, but for the most part of it, we hate living alone. So that's a great motivation to find somebody. So the question should not be so much whether relationships live up to our ideal hopes of mutual happiness, but whether they're better, if only a little bit, than not having relationships at all. So the future of love needs us to get interested in ambivalence, that is in the capacity to keep on thinking that something is quite good, even while we're painfully conscious of its many striking day-to-day imperfections. So yeah, so that's the summary. The question is whether it's so not so much whether we find what we are looking for, the ideal of mutual happiness, but I guess maybe it's a bleak way to look at it, but it's to say, is it better to have a bit of what you want, or to wait to get everything? And the writer says the future of love needs us to get interested in the ambivalence, that our capacity to thinking that something is quite good, even when we are painfully conscious of its many striking day-to-day imperfections. So it's not to say that love is going to be happy every day, that every day is going to be, sailing on cloud 9 or 10 or whatever. But it's to say that it's still good even when it's bad, and it's still better than being alone. Okay, so yeah, with that, I will welcome anyone who is interested in joining, and you can all come in and let us share what is the conception of love. How do we teach the the idea of love to the next generation of children? What do you tell the young boys and girls who are going to be confronted with this, not just the idea of love, but the idea of desire, the practical aspects of it, the communal side of love? How do you guide the next generation to a healthy conception of love? So yes, that is the question of the day. We are the time now. Anyway, it's now 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what time it is for everybody there, but it's pretty early. We have hold on, 6 o'clock. It must be about 4 o'clock East African time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Yes, and then 6 a.m. here. So good morning, good afternoon to the East Africans. Good morning to the Eastern and the Eastern and the Western coasts, yes, of America. We're still in the same coastline. So yeah, so if anybody wants to jump in, they're more than welcome. If not, we'll do a quick summary and call it a day. But I do appreciate everyone who's been here today. We had some new people, and once again, shout out to Mika for being in the midst of the protest. We hope everything is going to be okay with the Ethiopian brothers and sisters, and we hope they stand strong. They stand strong against this invasion. And I think the rest of African countries, we have to also make a stand from time to time. There's a lot going on in Africa. Africans are really starting to wake up and rise up and see that we have no friends. We have people who are actively working against our our interest. Oh, 9 a.m. Oh, okay. Yeah, because you guys are, I think, 3 hours ahead of us. So, oh, yes, Dada Kasita. I think we do. Too. We do need to talk about some of the things that we take for granted, because not just love, but imagine what it is to grow up in the world nowadays. Before, there was things that you discovered in time, in the appropriate stage of life. So things were not given to you at too early an age. But nowadays, the children who are growing up, they will know much more than adults, maybe even double their age. For example, even when it comes to smart, SMUT, dirty materials, or those explicit materials. Before, a child's introduction to things of that nature was usually illicit, or usually behind the scenes, so they had to work to get it. But nowadays, all you do is just a click away, and all the contents of the internet spill for be in front of you. So the children who are growing up now, they have a much different conception than we did. So if their first introduction to the relationship between men and women is that physical aspect of it, and they don't know the emotional aspect of it, they will simply look at love and lust, infatuation, a crush, and all that. It will be difficult for them to tell the difference, even to know what is in their self-interest. It will be something that they're trying to figure out, while everybody else is telling them that they already know it, or they'll know when they know. Karibu dada Kasidra.
Hi.
Amani is good. Amani is always the safest answer. If you're not sure, somebody says you have to marry Amani, and you're good.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Oh my goodness, this is great. We need more of these conversations. Can you hear me? Okay.
It's a bit muffled, but let's see how things go.
Okay, hold on. Let me take you out of my ear.
And thank you, Asante Sana, for joining. Asante is thank you. So,
Just
yeah.
try to take you out of my ear. Hold on. Let me call back in.
Oh, no problem. Yeah. And anybody else, you're welcome to call, so we can have this discussion. So imagine if you have a teenager child going out into the world, and they're asking, what is love? How do I know it? How do I find it? How do I know when it's real, when it's simply a transitional thing, when it's just a crush, when it's just lust, or when it's true. There's so many things that we don't know, and especially it being an emotion, it's very difficult to manage, because while love is a good thing and everybody seeks it, like I wrote in the introduction, it's also a form of madness. It's also for something that drives seemingly rational people to do incredibly crazy and stupid things. So love is a complicated thing. Yes, Karibu sister again. Let's see how this goes. You're on. You're muted. If you're Dada, you're muted. You're muted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Now.
Okay. Man, I had to get you out my ear. I had my earpiece in. Man, these conversations are much needed in our community, because we really don't understand how to get back to the love that we once shared. And Black people, we were learning how to love each other back in the 60s. And then what happened? They saw that we were bringing our families together. We were getting stronger. We were doing better than them. We were honoring our men. We had families. We had structure. And they looked and they said, oh, no, we can't have that. So that's when the Europeans came in and divided and took the men, dropped the drugs in our neighborhood first. Then they unemployed our men. Then they separated the family. And even till today, they still separate the moms, the families, because they'll tell the Black women, you can't have Section 8 if you have a man living with you. But the foreigners, when they come, they get to have their men in the house. So when are we going to not stop accepting their charity, stop accepting what they're giving us at the cost of our families? We're not doing that. We're taking their bribes. We're taking their trinkets at the cost of our babies, at the cost of our little boys learning and having a positive role model. And this is what's going on with our children. This is why our children are so angry now, because they don't have that role model. They're angry with the parents. They're angry with Black women. They're angry with the Black men, because we have not protected them. We have not done our job. We have not placed or combat the stereotype of what white people have thought about Black folk. We've not counteracted that. We've not shown them anything. We've walked right into their traps and have become
You want?
We're going to counteract what they say, and we're going to act different and be different, do it different. But we seem like everything they put out, we suck it up and we become what they want us to become, even if it's dysfunctional. So we have to get back to the right mindset and the right training before we can teach our children anything. We have to learn it right now. And that means separating from them, teaching your own, and we start from scratch because we know how to do this. We know how this works. We've done it before. But when we came together with them, we lost our minds. We evil communication, corrupt good manners, right? That's the true. That's true. We have those scriptures for a reason. And we don't go by them. Why? Because we think that savages who we had to teach to take baths, we taught them how to walk upright. We taught them. And then we turn around and start learning their dysfunctional ways. That's crazy. It's crazy. You the mic. Go ahead. I don't want to come over and take over.
You can speak as freely as you want. And when you talk about the 60s, you talk about, when Black Americans were fighting for, their right to have all these freedoms and so on. And when I was reading this part in 1965, when the first hippies, they were fighting for free love. You're fighting, for the freedom to work and live and all that. They're fighting for the freedom to F, basically. This is what they wanted to do. So this, when Black people are fighting, and this is why when they lump the whole, Black people and, the LB, whatever, that whole alphabet community, like, no, this is not the same thing. You're putting a whole group of people with a section of a group of people, like, so these people in the 60s, they were fighting for them. They were fighting for free love, for the freedom to do whatever they wanted, Other people are fighting for the freedom to live a life as a human being, but these people are fighting for the right to have free sex, free of any consequences, free of any, punishment, free of anything. So they are advocating free love in the 1960s, and they argue against all of society rules, against nudity, same-sex relationship, premarital sex, and all forms of sexual repression. So it shows you where, their focus is, where their priorities lie. When you're fighting for their life, they are fighting for the right, to party, literally. You remember that song, fight for your right to party. This is what they were doing in the 60s. So when Black people think that, we are for all, fighting for the same thing, no, they are simply fighting for something, to which to us seems petty, and yet we end up being, like them. We end up taking on those things. So they just start it off, they start, this, easy, casual way when it comes to sex. And then 30, 40 years later, the image of a Black woman is that of a loose, ratchet woman when they started this whole thing. So we just take on their behaviors, not even understanding where they came from and why, it was like this. So we end up just, repeating the mantras, not knowing where it came from. So this whole idea of sex without rules, of this hookup culture, of this, liberation, sexual liberation, it came from the 1960s when white people were fighting for the right to do that, when Black people are fighting for the right to, to have civil rights. So, yeah.
Like you were saying, we were already, I'm not going to say free, but we were well on our way to building our own. We had our own hospitals, own communities, own baseball. We had everything they had. It just wasn't built up to where theirs were because they had such a head start on us. But if we had stayed with our own and continue building, we would have built better than them. We've shown that at Black Wall Street. We built better than them. They were coming to us for everything they needed. And what happened? Somebody came in and saw what we had and got jealous and told a lie. And the same thing that always happened, a white woman, a dysfunctional white woman came and lied, and we lost everything. But we had everything that they had. We had over 200 cities. We were developing. So their fight. They fight for dysfunctional. Everything about them is dysfunctional. But we don't understand that. We see them as friends. We jump on every fight. We jump on everybody else's fight. But we don't fight for our own. We don't stand up for our own. We're not standing up for our own children now. We know what they're doing at our children as far as the schools and sending our children to prisons, but we don't fight for our children. We'll fight for theirs. This is what's going on with America, Black people in America. We have lost the love. We have lost the fight. We've lost everything that we used to fight for. We've lost that fight. They have just, I don't know if they just put out the fire, or I don't know. We have no fight in us anymore. We're so afraid now. But this is what happens when you allow your enemies to educate you. They can change a whole generation's mind. Now they're teaching our children LGBT. So what's the next generation going to look like? We're going to look like what? Girls and girls and men and men. And that's genocide. Black people, that's genocide. And then we see where most of our Black men are interested in white women. That's genocide. That's what they want. When are we going to pull back and say, no, we're not going that route. We're going this way. You guys can go that way if you want to, but we know how to do this. We're going to stick over here. We're going to love on us, and we're going to learn, and we're going to do better. When are we going to make a difference and put our foot down and no, it's no, we're not going that route. When are we going to do that? Ever? I passed my.
Well, when we learn how to love, I suppose, when we learn how to love, because where are we being taught about love? Where are we being taught about love? And I know that somebody, mentioned the Bible verse, love is kind and all that, and that is good and great. That's the concept of it. But practically, in day-to-day affairs, how do we even love ourselves? How do we, even start with that? Forget about loving somebody else. How do we, and just, what is love? For the most part, most people look at it as simply, feeling good about something. People define love as, feeling good. So if you love yourself, it means that day you're feeling good about yourself, you're happy, you're having a good hair day, you're feeling good and fine and all that. So people associate love with happiness. And so when it comes to that, even when it comes to, let's say, self-love, you say, oh, on the days when I'm feeling happy, those are the days that I love myself. And if I'm feeling down, then I should do more to love myself, to make myself feel good and great. And that's reasonable to some extent. But it also, people also apply that to love with other people. So they say, well, if I'm happy with somebody, if I'm feeling good every day, then I'm in love, then I'm happy. And then if any unhappiness comes, and this is why so many people find it difficult to maintain relationship, because they associate love and relationship with happiness, or being completed, or being fulfilled, or being this and that. So they're looking for something to get something. But when we read earlier, let me see if I can share it. Man, I hate, like I said, anyway. So when they talk about, Belgium, that there's 71% of couples splitting up. So even when people find what they're looking for, they still have a problem, maintaining it, because they don't know, why they got into it and how to keep it. They just know how to fall in. People know how to fall in love and how to fall out of it, but people are not even taught how to maintain it. So when they associate love and happiness, and they don't get happiness always, then they think, well, love doesn't exist here. Not to say that, you shouldn't be happy, but as soon as, for a lot of people, if they encounter unhappiness, then the love goes. And part of the reason here lies in the disappointment people feel with what had already been promised to them by the freewheeling 1960s, and before that by 19th century romanticism. So in the 60s, and even though, the time is over, that's why we have to look at how we got here, because we're still carrying on the attitudes and beliefs of people, those people before us, and we don't even know why we're still doing the things that we're doing. We simply, perpetuating the same habits without even realizing where they came from. So, but the reason why there's so much divorce and dissatisfaction is that people feel that they were supposed to be completed, like that Jerry movie, you complete me, and that's why even movies play a big part in deluding people about love. People think that, your life was gray and sad and barren, and then you meet someone and your whole life is transformed forever, which is not, it's not a lie. When you meet somebody, you're supposed to feel, differently. but it's not a feeling that it's supposed to go on every single day for the next 50 years, and then if it drops a little bit, then boop, you're out. So people feel disappointment when they feel that they have been cheated by the 1960s that promised them free love, happiness, constant, elixir. And then by the 19th, before that, by the 19th century, romanticism, which meant love was just this romantic, flowers and chocolates. And that's why, the flowers and chocolates and just, gestures, kind of gestures every single day. So the dream of love survives. People still dream of love. People still want love, but it's constantly disappointed. So, people still seek it even when, and this is a funny thing, when people say that madness is, well, what do they say? When you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. But when it comes to love, people are mad. Like people keep doing the same thing. People can keep getting into the same situations or similar situations, and then they're disappointed, and then they still keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And then, at the end, they're mad and angry that things didn't work out when they were the ones who are repeating the same cycle, because people don't know how to love. People don't know how to give. They don't even know how to receive a lot of people. But people are much better at receiving love than at giving love. And so everybody's disappointed when they don't get it. So the future hope in the article, it says the future hope for love lies in the notion of sacrifice. And sacrifice is accepting that we won't get everything we want from love, from relationships, or from marriage. But even if we fail to get all of that, it's still a lot to get, something, as opposed to getting nothing at all. So, yeah. What are your thoughts on that? On the whole idea of disappointment and the idea of sacrifice.
I look at that and I'm thinking, how do we learn something that we've never been taught? For example, our men, we want them to be fathers, protectors. How do they learn that if their dads, as little boys, were taken out of the home? If this love thing was working that the Europeans want to teach us, the divorce rate wouldn't be so high. But everything about them that they want to pass down to us is dysfunctional. So we have to get back to the basics. And we're not even trying to move toward something normal. We keep allowing them to lead us into more and more and more dysfunction. But if we understood the practices of older days, it was the man, when he saw a woman, he wanted to marry her, he would go to her father and he would pay the price of maybe whatever price was set on that woman or whatever back in the day. And he would pay that, and he would talk to her father and get the okay from her father first. We can't do that nowadays. Where's the father? We can't even find him. And then if you ask the mom, he could be dysfunctional, but if he's got a good job, or then she'll say, "Well, baby, go ahead. He's making good money." And it's about how is the treatment. We've got to get our minds right as far as what's really going on between what's really, my husband in the background talking. I'm sorry. We have to get back to the basics as far as what it is to really be a family. What is it? We've done it before. That's why I don't understand why we can't get back to it again. I don't understand. We are so busy allowing them to lead and guide us that we've lost focus. We've lost the way. And it's almost like Black folk don't even know which way to go now. We're going in so many different directions, but the directions that we're going in is genocide. Now you hate yourself so much that you get on YouTube and you talk about your own women, and you praise in dysfunctional women with mental illness and say, "Oh, those women are better than our women." What are we doing? How are we going to get this thing back together if we make videos and we're only after the videos that are filled with trauma, filled with a lot of drama? That's what we run to. Videos like this right here, we can't get 1 million views. Why? Because it's not dysfunctional enough. It's not. If we want to educate our own, It's got to be linked with some type of dysfunctional title, and then we'll get them. But then they won't stay because that's it doesn't have enough drama. Okay, so what do we do? Where do we start? I yield the mic.
Yeah, I mean, we have to start somewhere. We have to, we have to start having these discussions because we don't have, that luxury of letting other people define and redefine who we are. And unfortunately, for the most part, we have been told how to love, who to love, and how to do it. And that's not really love. That's manipulation. So these are conversations that we have to start. What does healthy love look like? Because for the most part, we have been showed only, the dysfunctional, the hateful, that's why we need shows like those old fashioned shows that showed, even though whether they were true, to life or not, we needed those representations of Black families, of African men and women living together. Even if, they had problems, they showed a way of solving them, of coming together. The Cosby Show was a perfect example of that. I didn't see it, but it was before mine. But I remember even Fresh Prince, Family Matters, those shows. Yeah, they may be, maybe they might seem out of date now, but we don't see any example of those. And people, we are visual creatures, human beings. You can sit down and tell them the good things about, this and that, but if you don't show somebody, an example that you can point to. And that's why we're still attracted to celebrities, even when we don't want to, even when you don't want to care, but they are in your face. They live their lives in your face, and it's difficult to avoid even, not keeping up with, those people. So unfortunately, all our examples of what love looks like is in celebrities, is in the media, is in television, and far less sometimes in our, in our practical lives. And so that's why we do need, unfortunately, we do need that visual representation, that media representation, so we can have some sort of reference, especially for people who might not have it. And yeah. Ndugu Focus asked, do you think we'll be able to get back to that, and how? Well, are you going for the pessimistic or the optimistic route? Dada, he's asking whether we can get back to it. I don't know. I think that we'd have to get rid of a lot of the things that, we hold on to now. We'll have to, like it says in this, in the last, in the last reading, that the future hope for love lies in the notion of sacrifice. And sacrifice, in this article, it says it's in accepting that we won't get everything we want from love, relationships, or marriage. For me, I say that sacrifice is about learning how to give, rather as well as to receive, because we don't. Love is our inadequacy of it is not just in an understanding it, but also in how we receive it, how we give it, and also in our expectation. The reason that so many people are disappointed with, the idea of love or the idea of marriage and so on, is because they are looking for, for something that was promised to them, and they don't get it. They're looking for something that was in the movies, that was, in television, in this fantastic world. It's the same thing like the dream of, the immigrant's dream of America. You come here thinking that, oh, wonderful, finally, you're promised everything. And then when you come, you see the actual price that you have to pay for it. And that is a price that most people are not willing to pay for love, or for family, or for relationships. They are only told that they are going in expecting to be given a lot, expecting to, find the purpose of their lives, the meaning of their life. They are supposed to find everything that they have looked for in this one person, and yet nobody can be that person for you. Somebody can be a good mate, but somebody cannot be the be all and end all of everything. They cannot be like that Jodeci song. Close to me, you're like my father. Close to me, you're like my sister. My sister, really, I'm like you're like my sister, my brother, my cousin, my grandma, my everything. Like that's a bit much, right? I mean, I can understand, your best friend or something, but hey, like your sister and your mother and everything in between, no, somebody cannot be everything for you. You also have to learn how to be, content, and then, also bring that contentment to somebody else. You cannot be just the recipient of all the benefits, and you're not willing to sacrifice. So I think real and optimistic. Okay. Doing forecast. We can both real and optimistic. Okay, so to be real, yes, we can achieve it, but the real part of it is that it will take a lot of work. It will take a change in the way we think about things and in the way we practice a lot of things, especially in our expectation of what love is, our definition of what it is. People will have to, learn about, that it's not the happy-go-lucky, romp through the wheat fields sort of thing. That part is there, and that's great. That's the part that movies and television always likes to exaggerate or to emphasize. But it's that part of the daily grind. They're waking up every day, they're looking at somebody and seeing, somebody for who they are. That's the real part. So I agree with that. The optimistic part is that no matter how much someone changes, and that's why, earlier it was, the talk of love complex versus love proper. The proper one is simply, you see somebody and you love them for who they are, and you accept them for who they are, and so on, which is a great thing. But the complex one is that not only do you accept them for who they are, but you accept them for who they will be, that you accept that someone is going to change, and that you will also change in not in your feeling towards them, but in that you still love them despite that change. So that's the complex aspect of it, that you can love somebody for who they are. That's the present one, but you can also love them for that complex, for their ability to change as well. So even if they change, you're still going to, not that they change completely like they do an about turn, but people evolve, people grow, people they have different interests and so on. So that aspect of being able to accept somebody's growth and change is also what a lot of people are not taught. A lot of people don't know how to do that, and the changes of their lives, not just in their lives but in somebody else's life, it also brings disappointment, because you find somebody at a certain place or time or whatever, and then both of you change in different ways, and people are not taught also how to manage the changes that life brings. So this is one of the reasons why the African rites of passage and the phases of life was so important, because at every phase of your life, you are being prepared for the next, not just to be a member of that phase, but also to become ready for the next phase of your life. So as a child, you are always in preparation for your rite of initiation, to be a part of the community. After your puberty, after your initiation, you're prepared for life as an adult, with responsibilities, whether you're a man or a woman, hunting or cooking or gathering, all these things you're being prepared for the next stage. And during the adulthood stage, you're being prepared for the marriage stage. So you're being prepared to be a good partner, a husband, a wife, to take care of the children, to be able to take care of the household, to protect your children and your wife and so on. and then during your marriage, you're being prepared for being a young elder, someone who's looked upon for advice and consultation and so on. And then during your older married years, you're being prepared for your eldership. You're being prepared for taking on the role of being a council in the council of elders, advising, being passing on the information and wisdom to the next generation. So at every stage in your life, there was preparation. So there was no, middle, what is it, the middle-aged panic or something like that. There was no this fear of getting older, or fear of the unknown or not fitting in, even for young children. They were always, you were always being prepared. But in the modern life, you just told, go out there and then find somebody and find your fortune and good luck. So
Tim, let me ask a question.
yes, go ahead. I've been going on for a while.
No, you're good. Forecast asked a very important question. And he said, do we think that we could get back to normal? I do believe that we can, but it's going to take, like you said, effort. It's on purpose. We're going to have to really horn in on what we're really trying to do, but it's going to take us, everybody else is going to have to remain on the sidelines and let us come together. But what's coming on this earth, we're going to be forced to come together. I guarantee you it. It's already started now. If we see what's going on now, you had a young Bakari did a show on the young ladies that were taken and kidnapped and put in the basement. It's going to take effort on our part. It's going to be something that's going to happen so drastic that we're going to be forced to come back together. And that's what I believe. And that's the only reason and the only way that I see us coming back together is something is going to have to force us to come back together. And I'm going to hang up and finish listening to you. Thank you for allowing me to speak, though.
No, thank you. Thank you, Asante Sana, for joining us and for your words of wisdom. We definitely need, especially you, to come and tell us more about it. I think you have more wisdom that we all need to hear. So thank you so much, Dada Kasida. And yeah, you're more than welcome to join anytime. Okay, Mwendetezi, what about J. Cole? What about J. Cole? I don't know too much about that. But yeah, to answer Ndugu Focus question, if we'll be able to get back to that. Well, I don't know. I think that we have to. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, today was a chill day. Today was a day we were just talking and finding solutions. It's not one of those crazy, exciting, filled-in days. But it's something that we need to talk about, because I don't think that we as Black people really talk about love, or really know what love is. I mean, we do know what it is. I think for the most part we do, but we don't really know how to practice it, because if we loved each other, we wouldn't be, constantly fighting. We wouldn't be constantly, at each other's throat. Especially, I can't say especially, because even in Africa, we have conflicts. We have, people fighting against other people. We have these ideas that someone is supposed to be in charge because of who they are and where they come from. So, we still have a lot to work on. And even when it comes to love, there's still a lot of confusion in terms of what love means, in terms of how to practice it. And I think that African societies, while we value peace and we do express it, we don't express love as much. You don't find, and I think that's just an African thing, but you don't find Africans, constantly, declaring their love for each other like you do here in the West. Like for them, I think I love you is just a way to say hello and goodbye. But in Africa, we don't really express love that much, in such an open manner. And sometimes that's good, but it's taken for granted. I would say it's taken for granted that if you're, say, of the same family, or if you're husband and wife, then you should be able to just assume that that happens. So how do we get back to that? I think the first thing is to go back to those principles of communalism, of the involvement of marriage, not just as individual choice between two people, but as a communal aspect of it. It shouldn't be just the communities involved at the wedding, where they just come to gather around and eat cake and watch the melodrama unfold. I think that increasingly, not that parents should have the last word, or too much influence on the children, but they should have an advisory role. They should have a more important role in advising the children. They should not just give the children this idea that you just go out there and find somebody. At least when children are still in the formative stage, when they're still learning or open to impressions or to ideas, that's the time you shape your child's mind and tell them what to look for in a partner, and what to expect, and how to be in a relationship. You teach them not just by words, but also by example. But if you don't have the examples, you teach them that love is not something that you simply expect to go get an ATM of warmth and kindness and compliments and all these good things, which they should come, but it should be something that is balanced with you putting something in as well, putting effort, putting loyalty, commitment, and it's not always going to be a happy ride. I think something that love songs and love films, and no, not love films, all films are love films, even action adventure movies, it's not just chick flicks that are about love. Nearly all movies have a love interest, whether it's about an action adventure, whether space, whether it's people in a desert. If there's a man and a woman, there's going to be a love story, or an implied one. So all those things, all those impressions we get from movies, from music, from reading, from talking to people, from the internet, all those impressions we get about love. It's supposed to be this happy, easy, happy thing. And yet, when in real life, when people encounter that, when the people encounter what it is in real life, it's part of that, but people are not really prepared for the realistic aspect of it, the part where you have to actually do the work. Let's see. When the thesis says there's no such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing. Oh, is that the J. Cole song? Is that the J. Cole song? Okay. I have never heard it. So the lyrics is no such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing. Okay. So that's sort of to say that that you should be happy with what you have, that you should not be looking at somebody else's somebody else's gifts and hoping that they were yours. And I think that happens not just in love, but in life in general. The whole envy and jealousy. See, this is why those we were reading earlier about those free love proponents. This is why they were saying that we should just get rid of marriage, because marriage and relationships, they come with this jealousy, adultery, divorce, all these emotions, these negative emotions that liberated men and women should not bother engaging in. So they say in an enlightened world, sexually liberated men and women should just give up on marriage, and along with it, jealousy, adultery, and divorce. So it is a deeply romantic idea that you can get rid of some of the uglier aspects of love as an emotion, because the good thing about the emotions of love, that happiness part of it, that's the honeymoon phase. That's the part where everybody, talks about on end, and people go on and on about it. But the other aspect of love that few talk about is that aspect of, of disappointment, of, of not getting what you wanted, of always being on the receiving, on the giving end and not receiving, and so on. So people do feel dissatisfied. The only film that shows that, the post exciting part of it was Mrs. Robinson, where after they run off, they do this whole thing about they break up a wedding and then they run off together and so on, and it's all happy and exciting. And then after that, there comes the realization that, oh, what has happened, what have we done, and so you settle into the married life. So weddings are exciting, and then marriage becomes this dull, boring thing because you're expecting to be constantly on the same on the same level as you see in the movies. So the first thing that we can do as a people is start teaching people the responsibilities of love, not so much the the happy aspects of it. Not discourage people, but to encourage people to to be honest about what it takes, not just to be in a relationship, but to work towards becoming a better person, both for yourself and for your person, your significant one, and also for the children. So when people split up, it's not just the two of them. For for a lot of times it involves not just friends, it involves family, and if they have children, it involves the children as well. So it involves a lot more people than just two people. So in modern times, when love now that has been linked to marriage, and love that has been linked to feelings and not so much practical concerns, so when that happens, it becomes easier to to just give up the whole thing, because feelings change from day to day. Something that you feel today might not be as great tomorrow. It's similar to the law of diminishing returns. If the first unit you consume is going to give you maximum satisfaction, and the second one less and less, and so on. So the initial the initial entry into relationships is usually filled with a great deal of excitement and drama and all that, and then the significant consumption of it becomes less and less satisfactory, because you have almost filled up the excitement. You can only go down from there. So managing expectations, that would be the first the first lesson. Is no that would be the second lesson. The first lesson is how to be responsible for yourself, how to be your own person first before you even get into it. Two unhealthy people will only make an unhealthy relationship. So somebody has to know how to love themselves first, how to know how to take care of themselves, and not just love yourself to make yourself happy all the time. It's simply being able to see yourself for who you are, and being able to give to provide your own needs, not always just your need for happiness, but also your need for peace, for stability, for material goods, for responsibility, meaning, all that. So that's your first honors. The second one is now managing your expectations of the other person. So your first duty is to yourself, to love yourself, to be responsible for yourself. The second one is to to love somebody else, but with a proper understanding and expectation. While it's hard enough to understand yourself, it's even harder to be able to understand somebody else. But it's better when you have done that work on yourself, instead of waiting and hoping that somebody is going to make you happy. So okay, Amanda Tezi is in a singing mood today. I tried singing that whole song with What Is Love, but yeah, I'm not a singer. Monetezi said, always gonna be a bigger house somewhere. Oh, okay. I'm not reading that. Wow. Okay. I thought J. Cole was a clean artist. I didn't know he was into, saying all this, N words and things like that. Wow. I haven't listened to his music, but I thought he was more of the, how do you call them, the R&B versus the rap. And R&Bs don't usually curse as much, that I feel. Okay, I'm not even going to read. Always gonna be a badder, be out there on the tours, but you'll never be happy till you love yours. Okay. Okay, so okay, when the Chelsea is really enjoying the whole J. Cole vibe. Okay, I'll have to listen to the song. I don't know the song. I don't know too much about the J. Cole. Always going to be okay. No, I can't put the N word there. Always going to be, yes. So there's always going to be somebody better out there, but you will never be happy until you love yours. Okay, that's a good message, that there's competition out there, but there's nothing you can do about it. So just be happy. Oh, me? No. I'm terrible at singing. I'm terrible at singing. I would, I would do a great injustice to the original musicians, but I only sang one line of it, which is not as bad as Iron Maiden, the last one that we sang. But it's an interesting song. The song is, "What is love? Baby, see, now you're making me sing it again. No more." But so it's this, I guess it's this guy who's been hurt and disappointed. The funny thing is that people get hurt and disappointed even when the love was not reciprocated. It's just, even the idea of wanting it and not getting it is so painful. What other thing makes you feel that way, that even not having it? Okay, so for example, if you apply for a job, or if you want to get somewhere, you'll be disappointed enough if you don't get it, but you'll move on. But with love, sometimes it just makes people go crazy. Like they obsess, they want it, they go for it. That's why the Greeks, they looked at love as a form of madness, which to some extent it is, because it makes people act in irrational ways. For some people, it's a good thing. It makes them better people, but for others, it makes them act in an uncharacteristic fashion. So it's an emotion. If that's all it is, an emotion is something that has to be handled and managed with care, because as we can see, there are people who don't know how to manage it. And I don't know how many crimes. I guess most crimes are either about money. I would say that's the very, very first one, either lack of it or a want of too much of it. But the next thing that causes people to go, overboard, or to act against their own seeming self-interest is something that is supposed to bring joy and happiness, and that's love. People fight over it. People kill over it. People kill others and themselves, and do much damage to each other in the name of love. So even this seemingly good thing can be dangerous, and it's surprising that we don't arm people better, or we don't teach people how to use this very deadly weapon. Love is not just also an emotion, it's also a form of manipulation. When they say sex sells, love also is very close behind. Love sells Christmas cards and Halloween greetings and things like that, and children toys. All those are manipulations on the idea of love. So when we talk about love, it's not just this innocuous, harmless, emotional thing. It's actually a very powerful force in the world. So being able to firstly be knowledgeable about it, and to harness that energy towards something constructive and not destructive, it's paramount for every society. And I think that we Black people have not really taken it into account. We haven't really grapple with what it means to love ourselves and to love our children and each other. I think that's why it's so easy for us to simply just, latch on to other people, because it's easier to love them, and because we don't know too much about them, we simply want to to be blissful in our ignorance. And we know each other too well sometimes to love each other. We know our faults, we know our weaknesses, and the way that love is sold to us is that something that is flawless, that you're supposed to love, something that is, out of this world. So when we look at each other and we see ourselves failing, or we see ourselves not being where we want to be, then it's hard to love ourselves both individually and as a people. It's hard to feel that sense of achievement, of pride, of yeah, of esteem when you look at yourself and your people, and you look at other people and they're always seemingly in a better situation than you, as J. Cole says in what did he say, a better be out there, a bigger house. Yes, so you see other people with bigger houses, you see other people with seemingly better lives, and we don't see that amongst our people. So that that causes us to not love ourselves as much, or to want to love other people more than we love ourselves, because frankly enough, they have more things than us. They have more things for us to love and to be envious of than the things that we have. So how do we love each other? It's not or how do we love ourselves? It's not so much to deny the reality of where we are. It's also to say, it's not the end all of it, that you can still be down, but you still have assets. You're still worth. You still have value. You still have, your children still have value, and we as a people still have value. So the final idea is that one of sacrifice. And sacrifice is something that we have to, it's important to talk about, because the future hope for love lies in the notion of sacrifice, that accepting that you have to give up something in order to get something in return. That this whole idea of love, of just putting out your hand and receiving warmth, love, affection, and all this from the universe, whether it's from a man or from a woman, that you just sit back and wait for all the love to pour in. That's the one of the greatest illusions that, or delusions that people have. Some people, and it makes people into bitter people. The whole idea that everybody is owed, is owed love, that you're supposed to just sit there and your true love will find you wherever you're hiding, in your basement, or in an alley, or in a corner store, going to work every day, that your beloved is supposed to just know, and is right now hunting you down, tracking you from day to day. So you better keep your regular habits so you can be found. But in any case, this idea that you can just sit and wait and it will come to you, that was, at least the people in the past, they were usually proactive when they came to the idea of love and marriage. Your parents would actively go out and search for a partner for you, or if you reach a certain age, you are encouraged to go forth and find a partner. But in nowadays, some people have even become lazy with the idea of love. That not only is it a wonderful thing, but it's also it's a right. Like, you have a right to love. And so when people don't get that, they're not only disappointed when they find someone they love, but that person does not give them everything that they desired, especially the happiness, the fulfillment, the constant joy. But also they are angry when they don't even find somebody, because they were promised. It's as if they feel that it was their right to find somebody, whether they're not, they go looking. And if they go looking and they're disappointed, that makes them even madder. So there are different pockets. There are even people who are successful in it. They also are angry if they don't find the kind of love that they were looking for, or the kind of fulfillment they were looking for. So people have become very, they feel entitled to love. They feel disappointment when they don't get it, and they feel disappointment when they do get it, and it's not the idea of it doesn't bring them the joy that they expected. because we're not taught about the concept of sacrifice in relationships, in love, not just in romantic partnerships, but even even parent-child relationships, even brothers and sisters and so on. The idea of sacrifice permeates every relationship that we have with other people, because it's the only way that we can communicate that love. If you only say love in words but you don't sacrifice anything, then that's just empty empty pronunciations. So yeah. Oh, what? I think I only. Okay, I won't hurt you with my terrible singing. I won't hurt you with my terrible singing. You said the animals are part of the art. I don't know. I am not going in that controversial lane. I just avoid it as much as I can, and I stay on the cool, chilled lane. So, but now I get it. I just didn't think that that J. Cole or this R&B artists, they sing that kind of music. So that was strange to me. Yeah, so that's the whole presentation on the idea of love, or actually the okay, focused. Okay. I thought that I was hurting you with the singing of my song, because if Oni was here, I would have been hearing all kinds of negative comments about my singing. But that's okay. Yes, thank you. Don't hurt me no more. That's the part of that unrequited love. That song. What is love? So I think he falls in love. The 80s was a lot about that, people falling in love and not getting it back, and then just hanging out in the bleachers, from a distance. So, hey, it was that time, people stalking you, every step you take, you're being watched. And these were love songs. But anyway, yeah, so when we start teaching about these ideas of relationships, things that actually affect people, while education is supposed to be good, and these are things that we're supposed to learn at home, not everybody gets to know these things. We're not taught about some of the most important things that we encounter in life. We should be taught about love. We should be taught about relationships. We should be taught about power, friendships, social cues. We should be taught about how to get along with other people, and how to overcome personal personal flaws, or to become better speakers, or better relationships, just better people. Where are the classes for that? This is not a class about ethics, in that case, because there are classes about ethics and as a philosophical manner. This is simply about helping people to meet their needs in a personal way, helping people to navigate life. And so having discussions about love, about life, and especially preparing people, because this is what the rites of passages was supposed to prepare people for. It was supposed to prepare you for practical living, for being able to manage, your life, being able to manage your family, your children, your wife or husband, and your home, and being able to live in a civil way. We always talk about, the civilized us, they brought us civilization, they brought us structural civilization, but social civilization, that ability to live in relative peace with other people, in to know your role, for everybody to be productive to their ability and their personality. I'm not saying everybody was a hard worker, but everybody who could contributed. So there are many things that emotions should not be unregulated. In fact, the greatest thing that should be regulated are emotions, because they are so unpredictable. And a society that just runs off impulse and and unrestricted freedom is not going to stand for too long. And that's why, that's 1960s experiment of free love and, free love and happiness and no consequences. It could not sustain itself because there are consequences. There are consequences to love, to relationships, to how we interact with each other. And this idea of being liberated from it is more of an escapist fantasy than a real solution. Unfortunately, we still have, the remnants of both that old romanticism where love became marriage, love relationship became just about feelings and not so much about, about practical considerations and parental advice or authority. And then we came into the new century where it became about feelings. It became about just two people, making decisions and with no help from other people. And so it became about love and personal fulfillment rather than duty and legacy. And so we're still, seeing the effects of that in the high divorce rates, in the dissatisfaction with relationships, in the casual hookup culture. But even though people have more freedom to do, what they want or to be liberated and to have, free and easy, interactions, the feeling of freedom has not replaced that one of emptiness. It's constantly, people are constantly disappointed and they seek new expressions of fulfillment, but mostly it's constant disappointment because they're constantly seeking but never willing to give. So it's just a cycle that everybody tries, and they jump on, they jump off, jump on, jump off, and nobody is willing to stay because they're not willing to put something in. So yeah, so that's the whole thing. If there's one important thing to get is that if love is going to be saved, is the idea of love is not going to be, end up in the bin and we just replace it with, I don't know, what would be the next evolution of love? It could be just a purely physical thing, because in the past it went from practical, from transactional when it came to land, power, and wealth, to it becoming, romanticized, but without being attached to marriage and responsibility. For example, we talked about the troubadours in the 12th century France, whereas they simply wanted to express love, they did not want to act out upon it. And then you come to the 18th century, where you have the French kings and their several mistresses, where marriage was a state duty. They married to advance their kingdoms, but love was considered a personal matter. So the private life was the love life, and the public life was the king and the queen and so on. And then you come to the 19th century, in about 1850s, yeah, you come to 1800s, you come to both the Scottish rebellion, where they were running away from English law and they were trying to, to get married without parental authority, and to, Darwin's conception of humans as, descending from primates, thereby saying that, if we act in, unmonogamously, if we act, opportunistically, and without sexual restraint, it was merely a throwback of our primate ancestry. So we were bestial because we descended from beasts. So that explained, people's, aberrant desires and natures. Then you come to the free love of the 60s. As I said, that was a time when people wanted to throw off the shackles and the rules of societies and taboos. And that led to the disappointment and the high divorce rates of our current times. But that has not led people to, to leave aside the ideas of love as a romantic notion. Rather, it has made people cling to it even more and to attach even more feelings to, to love and partnership, and that has become the prevailing dominating idea of our day, that love is a feeling and that it's, it's the most important one. But even though people still don't want to sacrifice, they don't want to live alone, they still want to have a relationship. And so how can we get people to be able to both sacrifice for love and receive it in a way that is healthy for, for both parties, and avoid the disappointment and anger and that madness that results from unrequited love or from betrayed love or from the other many myriads of ways that, that love can go wrong. Okay, so that was our talk for the day. Thank you so much, Dada Kasira, for hopping on. I will be closing out soon. If anybody wants to come in and share your thoughts, you're more than welcome. Wenda Tezi, the Focused Radio, thank you all for getting in, and thank you, Tezi, for your contributions with the J. Cole song. Yes, the sister with the N words. Yeah. And then love or lust. Yes, so we talked about love and lust as well. We talked about, I wanted to go, maybe next time we'll go into it, but the modern thoughts on love. This is the impact. What impact does love have on the autonomy of both the lover and the beloved? So, this was just a summary, but next time I might go into it in more, in more detail. But basically, it was looking at love as a union between two people, love as robust concern, mostly in a friendship area, or love as a form of value, whereas you put you value on somebody, based on their love, and you bestow value on something. Something may not have love, might not have value, but by giving it love, you bestow value in it. Or you could both appraise it. Appraising is simply looking, judging, and saying this is how much this worth, this cost, and bestowal of value is taking something that might not have value and giving it value. So you say you take something that might not, or someone that might not have meant something to you, and now because you love them, they mean the world to you. So that's the bestowal of value. Or the appraisal of value is, for example, seeing somebody who is, valued in society as being a beautiful person, and saying, appraising that value, and saying, yes, this person is worth this much, or is an important person because of who they are, or what they look like. And then love as emotion proper versus love as complex. So that one is about loving somebody proper when who they are versus who they're going to be. You can love somebody for how you find them, and love them for who they are at that moment, what they mean to you, but know that that person will change as a matter of course, and so will you. So is that going to continue, despite the change, despite, because if they change, they're no longer the person that you fell in love with, technically, but they are still sort of the same person. So do you still love the person who has changed despite themselves? It's so sort of like, if somebody changes their appearance, and everybody will. So in terms of the modern love, people are not taught to accept this change. That firstly you should love somebody as they are. That's the emotion proper. So you take somebody as they are, not to say that you don't want them to improve, but the emotional complex one says that even with the changes and improvements, you're still going to keep that emotion. So that's a more stable, kind of love, the one that stays despite the changes. But some of them don't. Maybe there's some changes that are too abrupt, and too disconcerting for either the lover, for the belover, or the beloved, and so that one changes the the emotional view of love. Then the value and justification of love. And this is the interesting part, is because how we love and how we justify it, it's usually a very, a very ephemeral thing to ask somebody, why do you love, that particular person? What do they have that somebody else doesn't? And in truth, it would be hard to put a finger to it, because everybody sees something different in whoever they fall in love with, or whoever they choose to be with. So while somebody can name a particular thing about somebody, it's not something that is just particular to them. If it's about kindness, beauty, sensitivity, all of that, or handsomeness, anybody else can have that attribute, but it's that person having those attributes in that combination that is hard to justify. So for the most part, even though people will swear up and down with their love, it's very difficult for somebody to justify, the idea of love, whether, they're saying, oh, it's handsome, rich, and all this, or she's pretty and beautiful and kind, but you still have to ask, is that why you're with them? Is because of that? No, it's because of this and that. So the justification is more of a personal one than one that can be, clearly outlined. When love was a practical thing, when it could be shown that you're getting these benefits and so on, it could be easily, more justified. But emotions make it a lot more, a lot more complex and a lot more difficult to justify and to, to validate love as a personal thing. Not that it's not real or true, it's just that when it comes to it, it's more complicated than just saying, oh, the object, this is the reason for the object of my affection. Okay, yeah, so that was a good one. Thank you so much, and be focused. Yes, and I hope next time you would be home, or you will find you at home. But thank you still for joining. I do appreciate the comments section, and you still participated even if you're moving about. So much appreciated. And of course, the Dr. Sidra Chick, thank you for the comment section, as well as for joining and having the discussion. Definitely appreciate you. Adisu Demte, thank you for joining us. I still can't say this one properly. Kabdi Majid Kabdala. Oh, okay, maybe. And Judith Tube, hello to you as well. Who else did we have today? We had Meron Life. Yes, this is in order, in reference to the current protests that are going on in Ethiopia right now. So do check out that information in Swahili Nation. And we had Sino Media. Thank you for joining. Mondatezi, of course. Oh, before we go, we always have to remember we're still continuing with the campaign to get the new offices in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. So Swahili Nation is still we're still working to get the new office, hopefully soon, and to have a physical place where we can have meetings, where we can have discussions, where we can hold conferences, and just have interactions with the local people. So we're still working on getting the office soon, and we hope that you can all participate and help where you can. It's the GoFundMe page. Let's see. Why don't I never see it? It's a GoFundMe page. Just type in Swahili Nation GoFundMe page, and while we're on that, I'll just play the Reimagining Africa. That is the campaign to take back the image of Africa, to take back the image of how we see ourselves, how other people see us, to be able to be in control of that media that is being portrayed about us. So this goes in terms of how we see ourselves and building our image and our self-esteem, so that we're not at the mercy of someone telling us and defining for us what is an African and what direction we should take. that we should, you know, we shouldn't let anyone tell us our identity and who we are. This is something that is also part of, of the African traditions, where we ourselves, we take that that responsibility to take back what is ours. It's not just the art that was stolen from us. It was also that identity, that tradition, that culture, and that means to self-identify yourself without somebody else coming in and telling you who you are. So in the spirit of reimagining Africa, we have to reimagine Africa in our own image. We have to think of Africa as ours, and what do we want Africa to be. So let us reimagine Africa in our image and not that of people from the outside.
So the lie began from the very beginning of time, right? And I can ask you one question right now. What does history tell us you about Africa? Who discovered Africa? If you write right now on Google who discovered Africa, you find out that is one white man that he came and discovered Africa. And you can ask yourself that how can you discover a place that already exists? How can you discover a place that people already live in that place? It is impossible, but that's what the history tells us. That's what people believe about Africa, that it was discovered by a white man. This guy, he came, and then he went back, he gave a report, and then the next we know is colonialism, because those guys, they sat somewhere to divide Africa like a piece of cake, because they discovered it, they own it, it belonged to them. But that is us. We discovered, we're the first people to know. And today you have a lot of people around the world that they think that Africa was discovered by them.
Okay, so that's our reimagining Africa. That's our campaign to reimagining Africa. It is part of Swahili Nation's mission, which is to defend the image and to bring back the heritage of Africa, to decolonize the mind through authentic knowledge, and to create a bridge for oneness and a peaceful Africa. So in terms of defending our image, that means our self-image, our image, to the world, but firstly, our image of ourselves. We have to be in charge of how we see ourselves, how our children see us, and to bring back the heritage of Africa. That is our duty to the future, but also to the ancestors who created those artifacts, so that we may also have an example of African innovation, creativity, artistry, and excellence. To decolonize the mind, because our mentality is still very European in thinking, in ambition, in even the things that we value. So we have to bring back the real knowledge, the authentic knowledge, and to create that bridge. We can only have unity and peace in Africa if we have real knowledge of each other, if we have that love for each other and love for ourselves. So we as Africans have that responsibility to reach out and create unity and peace, and and to create that love, that to show that love we want to receive. So Again, thank you, everyone. Welcome. Thank you. I can't read, but I know it's Ethiopian writing. So welcome as well. And glad to be here. We're about to close out now, and like we always do, we thank the ancestors for a wonderful discussion, for a great conversation. Thank you all for joining us, for being here, for giving us wisdom, enlightenment, understanding, and for being able to share and receive knowledge graciously. Appreciate having, a place where we can talk amongst each other, where we can have these discussions, and where we can meet and join and be, the African people that are communal and friendly and great. So once again, thank you ndugu Focus. Thank you all again. Asante sana kila mtu kwa kukuja, kwa kusikia na kila kitu. Tutaonana. We will see each other again next time. I know there's a program coming up very shortly. I think Biggie is on with the diaspora talk, so we should be on pretty soon. I probably won't be because I am out completely. But once again, thank you to the ancestors for giving us a good discussion, and for everybody who showed up. We thank you and have a wonderful day and night. And kwaheri. Kwaheri kila mtu.